Amazing
It's always excellent connection, and then it just goes downhill from there.
It's almost worth having all those 5G things, but then you think,
We don't have 5G.
oh, don't they? Yeah, well, that would do.
Yeah, and mobile can be okay, but sometimes it's wrong with fade out sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then your audio and your fixed is all that. But anyway, so we're moving on. So we've wrapped up on the DDoS. So what we're going to next is onto customer experience. So we're going to have Ken, then we're going to have a remote presentation. So we'll be using the Jitsi Bridge. I'm hoping using the Jitsi Bridge will be more successful than we're having with the YouTube streaming. The upstream really is a bit of a problem, but it's saying it's an excellent connection at the moment. So anyway, so all right, first name. Are we finished at the back there? Yes. Okay. So Ben, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Alan. Thank you, everyone. It's nice to see everyone. Everyone hear me all right? You can hear me all right in the back? Yeah. Nice one. Right, I'm going to speak to you about the future of conversational interface. And all we do is provide some very, very specific details about what it is that we need to do to get a good conversational interface, so conversational interfaces. It's about having a solid basis in text first and then moving that on to conversational voice. It's about having great, so not just your graphic design, but your conversational design as well. And then it's also getting the nomenclature, the vocabulary, and the accents right when you're doing the voice recognition. And finally, to really propel it, it's about getting self-learning, self-correcting training. Now,
You're joking. Perhaps a professor. Hello, computer. Just use the keyboard.
with computers. So that's sort of that point of the clip. Has everyone seen that clip? Has everyone seen that Star Trek? Some people haven't. Maybe everyone in the world would have known. But anyways, first, let me tell you just a little bit about myself. My name's Ben Waymark. I work for a company. We do conversational interfaces, and we started off as a conversational middleware company. Now what we do is we focus specifically on the credit and collections industry, working with customer-focused credit and collection. So what happened back in the old days, credit and collection was usually about coming in with a court order and a baseball bat. You sort of get your money. Now where debt's sort of everywhere, it's much more customer that are wanting to sustain long-term credit relationships with customers who need to buy things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to buy. And a lot of the early internet things, back 20 plus years ago, I also have a bit of telecom experience, not a massive amount though. A very classy SMS sender that would ask people if they wanted horse racing tips. That was a nice little money maker that I don't always admit to people. And customer support for a PBX way back when all the engineers left out and I got parachuted in to support something. 20 years, so my vocabulary tends to be British. And then I work for an Irish company and have for Irish companies for the last 5 or 6 years. It's Irish as well, so if you're confused, how do you think I feel? But enough about me, let's talk about Walter Ong. Has anyone heard of Walter Ong? And he was a Jesuit scholar who wrote a book in 1982 called Orality and Literacy. Really interesting, pre-literate societies or oral societies where everything is done through memorization, everything's done through in old epic poems. There's always a lot of begatting and who came from who. And these were all built around mnemonic devices that people used in order to remember things. Then what happens is writing happens, and everything sort of changes. Suddenly, all the begatting can get written down and it's not memorized. And then the rules, the laws, everything in the society becomes static because things are written down, because you have a permanent record of them. Then what he traces is what he calls orality. And a secondary oral society is where you have the writing, but what you do is you use the writing to make orality better. So examples in this would be in plays, in radio, even in music and all that. So we have a sort of a secondary orality where things are being transmitted orally in a written society. Now, this is all very interesting, except how does it fit in with conversation? Well, conversational interface, we're going to see the same sort of flow happen with computing. But it's not engineers programming computers, it's people having conversations with a computer, just like they do on Star Trek, on any of the Star Treks if you've watched them, where you're asking the computer questions, you're asking it to do things, and you don't need to be an engineer. So sorry everyone, and another 500 for our job. So why conversational? The main reason, now has anyone here used Alexa much? Does anyone here like it a lot? The point, it works great for those same three things. It works great when you get up in the morning, you say, in fact I just tell my Alexa, all you're doing is you're barking commands into it. So you're sort of, and this is what we've always had. Anyone ever used programming cards? See, I never did. My older sister did a computer science class and she had them. So jack cool those things. We only had stupid keyboards when I had it. But we did go, we've been through 6 round, and then you get to a keyboard where you're typing out those commands, and pretty soon different languages and of object oriented, and all the input devices we have all never been great. And there's a few reasons, and one of the big reasons, really difficult to get devices talking to each other. Now, I was so cool in high school, Radio Shack, TRS-80 Model 100, which I would sit taking notes, and everyone just hated me. And I would take off C, and then in our Mac XE, there's a COM cable that you could use. And I can't remember if I had to use a modem or not, but I send it over, I think it was through FTP, but I'm not even 100% sure now. And that was the only way you could get 2 different devices. There, really quickly, internet, Usenet started, the old alt groups, that type of thing started happening. IBM agreed that they could read each other's disk formats. That got really exciting, and then that around. And then out comes Netscape in 90, a lot about the RESTful APIs, but these have been a great way that we've managed to get this interoperability. We've managed to get, doesn't matter what language you're using, doesn't matter what your operating system is, kind of anything can talk to anything. When I use a RESTful API to connect to my Alexa, so that I can ask my Alexa when the Alexa connects to the Dublin bus service, which has an open API and tells me, all that only works in context. It has to know that who I am, it has to know what I'm looking for, it has to know where I am, if it wants to even have a chance of being conversational. Now we have other tools that do this. Science has been doing a lot. I've a single person flying as a single flight in the middle of the week after having the conversation, because when you're asking your Alexa or your whatever your interface is, where should I book something that will be a really nice holiday, smooth everything over a bit. So context is difficult. For a very simple example of you have the problem where you sort of have some of the context. But when I'm saying visa, does that mean a visa to travel to Paris because my British passport doesn't let me go to Europe anymore? Or does that mean, can I pay for that flight on visa? Any conversation, I go to the cab drivers, I'd like to go to the, in America called Houndify. Nothing to do with us, sadly. But this is a great example of what you can do with a bit of context.
What's the interest rate on a new savings account?
The current annual percentage yield is 0.3% on a new savings account.
Is there an ATM on the corner of First and Market Street?
It's just it's a YouTube that they put out. It shows what you can do when you have that bit of context, but exciting. And really, a lot of this. How much time have I got?
You got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Cool. Big mountain to climb comes in usability. Now, I think this usability actually starts with the usability with the tools, because trying to build conversations is really difficult when you have to go on to something like the IBM Watson interface, and every single step of the pull and push and wait for it to reload. So really, if we're going to climb this mountain, we have to get over the usability. First in the tools that are really good. Then what we have to do is actually make the conversation themselves. I was at another job, I was working with a company in China, and we were negotiating a contract over WeChat using voice recognition and automatic, absolutely incredible that we could be sitting in an office, say something in English, they would then reply in Chinese, that would come back, and the translation was so good that we're actually able to do that. Now they had a bit of knowledge of English. We had some people who spoke Mandarin. Daughter, terrible speller. She's 17 now, but when she was a kid, she was a terrible speller. And I noticed when she started sending texts, they started getting better and better. Until one round watching TV, and she sort of says a random word into her phone, and I said, "Oh, what's that?" She goes, "Oh, it's easier just to say it than to spell it." And I truly think she's never going to learn how to spell this. You know, I mean, kind of reminded me back when I was a kid and I had the calculator watch. Mm-hmm. And then the problem is always going to be with the interface. So has anyone ever put in the world and said, this is it? Even my app that did, which I sure was aware of this with KLM, but they did a huge amount of research and a lot of publicity around everything they did to do conversation. And they did it, I mean, they did it well. They did absolutely everything they could. They had agents that were automatic. If you book a flight with KLM, you're more likely to get a button-driven menu thing just because it works better. Now one of my favorites is If This Then That, which is just sort of a home automation sort of fun tool that you could get. Does loads of things. But we're still more in, if anyone remembers Microsoft front page for the web, we're still about at that level. Shop can design your page, move all the elements around, and then you build it. And really, that's where we need space with what the programmers are using. Then what we can do, and if you're interested in this, Erica Hall did you break it down into bricks, and then you can sort of put all those bricks together, and you design them, you test. Of course, has anyone seen this? This is one. I don't know.
Installed voice recognition technology in this lift ahead of us. Voice recognition.
I'll send that link around as well. It's definitely worth watching. It's quite funny. But yeah, so it's getting all those accents right. It's getting the terms right. You'd be amazed at how different the things that you say, the words that we say, the things that makes Alexa so frustrating is that if you ask Alexa to turn your bedroom light on, and then you ask it again, it says, "Sorry, that device doesn't work." And it will keep doing that. And that's not how people speak. "Sorry, that doesn't work." "No, it's broken, mate." "Yeah, it's still not working." "No, you're really going to have to try something else." That's going to be a lot less important. Then it's having that is that you are containing that customer information. And then what you can do is you can also work and you can test these conversations, very specific outcomes. And then there's clear commercial goals. You can build this and say, we want to make sure our net promoter score is this, or we want to upsell or cross-sell, or whatever your goals are, you can sort of build in what those metrics are, and you can really work out how to make the system better and how you can prove that the system you're making is a lot better. So, in conclusion, the key to making that great conversational system is going to be in good RESTful APIs. It's going to be good programming and development tools. It's going to be a solid basis in conversational text. And then from there, we move that on to voice. You get and keep context. You have great UX-driven conversational tools. Get the vocabulary and the accents right. And then you have the self-learning and self-correcting. And what I...
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah. Do you have time for questions? Or
Yeah. If you've got any questions, I'll just get set up here
Okay.
for the next session.
Any questions?
What's your motto on the motto of your product, of your brand? WebEO? I think you should make conversation great again.
That would be, that's good actually. Get it on a baseball cap.
Testero, ale to ostatnio no. No mam teraz posłuchać, nie try again.
Or at least we can hear you loud and clear. Let me just get the... So we've got our first remote presentation. So we're streaming to work reliably, but fingers crossed that for this real-time communication piece, it works a damn sight better. So, Ken, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ken Herron. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for UIB, and with me I have a very special guest, one of UIB's resellers, Joe Gravante, who is the CEO and co-founder of Union Studio. So he's going to do at the end. What is audience experience? You know, another bad marketing term. Customers need you to help them to solve their number one problem, and that problem is audience experience, or AX. What matters the most to brands, to businesses, and to governments as we're all moving into 2023, and you guys know this, these are the experts in the room, is the ability to engage a specific target audience. And this audience can be customers, employees, citizens, and others, and the way that we do that is to help people, to give them the capabilities to create a compelling audience experience at scale. This compelling audience experience directly translates to decreased costs, increased revenues, and most significantly, the ability to create a positively differentiated total audience experience. So why does audience experience matter? We know that customers struggle with managing a differentiated brand journey at scale in this post-pandemic world where the external and internal audiences, they decide the platform, the channel, and the language. Organizations with best-in-class AX have a sustainable competitive advantage. It costs them less, it takes them less time, and with the dual pillars of audience experience, omni-channel messaging, and conversational AI, it allows them to do things that their competitors cannot. So what I'm going to do is go through some best practices that we've seen with different customers. I've tried to pull from customers in different regions, different industries. Some of these you may nod and smile and say, yep, we know that, keep going. Others may be newer to you. And then at the end, we will have a live demo because showing is a lot better than talking. So in terms of best practices, what are the basics? What's the starting point? The ability to talk to the customer on their preferred channel. We know WhatsApp, for example, has taken the world over. It's ubiquitous in many countries, but it's to really match what the user wants to use with the channel that they already know how to use and have on their devices. Any language, we no longer get to choose that or dictate that. And any mode. And I heard from the last speaker very clearly, people want to speak, that is best for them. Maxline Global, by the way, we don't sell directly, by the way, to partners like our friend Union Studio with us today. So for a customer care use case, the best practice here, and I start with this because agent, but it's really pulling together the best of both worlds to handle what can be handled well with the ability to bring in the live agent as needed. Bosch Indonesia, out of Jakarta, have a customer service, and this one's very interesting in that they do very technical customer service. You can almost think of it as a tech support channel. They use a group chat internally, privately, so that they can then reply back to the customer with a good answer that has been validated. Conversational banking, and with all that's going on in the world, what they are doing that is a true best practice is through the customer journey, not just to complete a transaction, but to identify what do they want next, what will next add value to them. Built into the chat so that they can, at the end of the day, we know that many times different conversational AI capabilities to generate more revenues by bringing more value to the customer. Peugeot has a very interesting one out of France. They've had e-commerce for quite some time. Because of COVID, because of increasing petrol and fuel prices, if you're selling motorcycles, you're having a very, very good year. That they have a dedicated AI assistant, and that they're getting a lot of first-time motorcycle buyers, a lot of first-time motorcycle riders, a lot of questions from safety to insurance to how do you pick the best motorcycle. Well, we know that If you can have a dedicated salesperson, someone who stays with you, not just from the purchase experience, but onto the ongoing service and maintenance, and very few companies are able to do this, with AI, you are able to give someone from the get-go a targeted, dedicated AI assistant that stays with the customer throughout the lifespan. As they buy and they sell, migrate to different, understands that, has all their information, but it has that same personality. So, hey, Ken, it's good to see you again. It's been a couple months. How can I help you today? For delivery, which are more common use cases, they're using it for talent acquisition. How do we get entry this with many white-collar jobs? I'm looking for a job. I can work 3 hours a day. I need to go to school. Where are the nearest restaurants? Not just, but the restaurants I can get to easily that have an open job that are near the public transportation I have access to. I have a subway card. So this ability to be able to do it and actually showing the commute, the full access to public transportation as part of selling them on working for. We're very proud of this one. We were waiting. Because this is the heart city outside of Stuttgart. Yes, she speaks someone coming through on business. The ability for HANA to, if you're speaking proper German, to thread customers based in Germany, the chatbots are very efficient, very precise. They don't necessarily have a sense of humor. HANA, if you let her, will give you her favorite local recipe. So she really is steeped in the local culture, able to promote their city, both from a business and a tourist perspective, by really leaning into the culture, and their chatbot, HANA, really. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Joe again. If you'd like, I will stop sharing my screen and let you go ahead and share yours and tell us, what have you and your team created?
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ken. And thanks for having me here. I wish I could be in the warm Portugal, but I'm here in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And so I really appreciate you guys having me here to talk today. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
So here at Union Studio, we specialize in working with large healthcare organizations here in the United States to digitally transform their care experiences. Because more and more, as you guys know, as consumer experts, that you need to be able to improve the quality of your care experiences in order to continue to thrive, both as a profitable business and meeting all of these changing customer expectations. And so for us, we really think about it in 3 key pillars. Improving access to care. And so in the United States, there's care within a specific area. And today, we look at the local hospital and the clinic area where a doctor works is kind of where they work. But in the future, these organizations are looking to meet their entire area of licensure. And then when we look at improving efficiency, today it's really staff serving processes, so it's not necessarily the most efficient. But with improvements in the care experience, moved towards self-service and hybrid care with automated processes. And something that we don't, it's mostly frustrating. And a lot of times patients have to come to you. And so what we're working on is helping build that muscle to be total lifetime value focused. And really think about how you use branded experience to differentiate yourselves and go to know business. But in the United States healthcare system, these are muscles that need to be developed. One, right, which is someone's ability, if they're having what they believe is an emergency, to call emergency care. And right now, that emergency care has 2 key options. When you're talking to them, they can either send you an ambulance to provide patients with the ability to see a doctor right now. And so that third option does a lot of really great. A lot of the people who come into the emergency room are actually can be met outside of the emergency room. Their needs, almost 80% of the. And so, it's reliable in the sense that you can definitely access it. And so we had this challenge of trying the time that they're a child all the way to the time that they may be, very elderly. And so making it as simple as possible, frictionless. It had to be in their channel of choice. We couldn't just assume that they would be on the telephone, have to have someone come to them. We wanted to meet them where they were. We needed to require no downloads, no registration, no logon, while still keeping it privacy and regulatory compliant. And so with that, our technology platform, Ola, which has omni-channel ability and which uses messaging as one of the many ways in which we connect all of the nerves inside of the healthcare system. We used that a lot in this solution. And Ola provides us the building blocks to be able to create experiences like this very quickly and test them out and learn from them. So I'm really excited to share with you guys the emergency room and how we hand this off. And so I'm going to do a live demo with you guys. And I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be both the 911 person as well as myself as the patient. And so here's my phone. And I'm going to show you how we make this work. And so a 911 operator, like I said, most times only has access to send an ambulance. But when it's supported by Emory, what they can do is they have a portal that allows them to very quickly intake a basic piece of information to, to be able to send a link directly to the patient using the messaging channel of choice. And in this example, I'm going to be showing you text message, but with UIB, we can support over 70 different secure channels. And so we can really meet them in their channel of choice. And so by clicking send this patient link, I'm going to show you, once they have this link, they can click it and it instantly brings them into Emory's waiting room where we're waiting for the doctor. Behind the scenes here, we've already notified a queue of doctors at Emory that there's an emergency patient who needs care. And we can use and so here we're using Doxy.me, which is a very popular service here in the United States for providers to go ahead and start care. And so there's lots of messaging behind the scenes here and side of the systems and to be bogged down by the technology. And so, these type of care experiences are making messaging.
Excellent, thank you so much.
So why don't we go ahead and move to the questions,
Yep.
Alan, if that works for you, and we can take questions on anything.
Absolutely. Well, we're just going to give you a round of applause for a working demo. It's obviously early in Seattle, so I guess somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys heard my kiddos?
I thought that was just your
in the emergency room.
Do you have any questions for Joe or for Ken? So I have a quick question, Joe. So this is live. You've got this deployed within which hospitals?
Yeah, so this is live. This is for the Emory Healthcare System. It's it's the premier academic institution for the state of Georgia.
Okay.
They operate about 150 clinics and 11 hospitals, and they support about 3.2 million.
To talk to a doctor, can you actually specify the language in there as well?
Yeah, we use real-time translation services. This works excellent inside of experiences like this, where if you have a very diverse population that has, within that service, join the calls.
Excellent. No, that's great. Again, Ken, Joe, excellent presentation and demonstration. It's always nice when it comes together. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
Phew, that worked a lot better than the streaming. So, Karel, if you could come on down, please.
Hi everybody. So I'm Carol. I am I've been in the TADSummit since almost the beginning.
Yeah.
2016 or 2014, 15.
I think it was, you were there, no, you were there for Istanbul, so 2014. Because we were, 2013 was when we were in
I was, people around here, I've been in telecom for 20-some years. I worked for a couple of mobile operators in France, or fixed also, Cegetel, SFR, Orange. I worked for Telefonica in Germany, setting up their mobile operation there years ago. I worked in the US to launch the mobile manufacturer, Alcatel Mobile Phones. But I also, had a couple of entrepreneur venture in the past. In the internet days, in the boom, I started a company called EasySync. We were doing billing simulation software for marketing for telcos still. And I started Voxist in 2016, and that was something I started after the TADSummit, I think it was, or TEDx, I don't remember which one. TEDx, yeah.
Or Paris.
With the help of quite a few people from the TAD community. And since then I've been coming almost for every TADSummit to do the no bullshit job of telling how terrible it is to build a startup in the telecom world, which we heard a little earlier. So I'm a masochist. I'm still doing that. Over the last few years, I also was involved with Slash. We tried to do a multilingual messaging system. Still, it's almost dead. Maybe not. We'll see. And lately, I've worked in a couple of associations in France, trying to leverage the ecosystem in the AI domain. So, I am part of the association called France IA, which put together all the AI startup in France, and we're trying to figure out how we can help each other. But also, and more importantly for me, I've been creating a company, well, an association called Le Voice Lab, which is an association with all the voice tech companies, and where we first tried to build a data set in the French language to build AI in the speech domain, and you will see why this is quite important. So, for you, those of you who've seen me over the last few years, you know Voxist mostly through the voicemail service that we built. That's something, an idea I started working on at Orange, and the idea behind that I had in 2016 was, I was thinking, one day when you call someone, you will no longer have a voicemail, you will have a vocal assistant. And that was before Alexa, etc. But already I had this vision that, you should interact with something and you should have a conversation. And that's what I wanted to build with Voxist, and we started with two main features. One, which we call the personalized greeting. Here is the idea that, when Alan called me, I greet him and saying, "Hey, Alan, Carol is not there," and leave him a message. But at least, it felt so much more personal, so much nicer than the standard voicemail. And the second thing we've done is speech to text. So, most of the time when you don't answer a call and they get to voicemail, you're not also in a situation where you can actually listen to the call. So it's much easier to have the message transcribed into text. So we have this app, which is on mobile, worked well. We have tens of thousands of customers. We have a freemium model, so we transfer those into paying customers, which is what does most of the B2C apps. And we have also a B2B version, which we have consulting firms, law firms that use that. Here, the idea is that you have the assistant. B2C is not a good idea. So you might think I had the wrong idea by doing B2C, but actually, when I thought I will not make a living out of the B2C offering, my idea was to telcos. And why? Because most of the telcos, they have crappy apps, and they don't know how to develop apps. I know because I buy something, it works, so no need to keep developing. And what happened is that some companies I've been talking for almost 6. Then I have to tell him the truth that he's never going to launch with me because he doesn't have a budget, he doesn't have a team, he has a lot of back office, and his management think voicemail is not going to be a business, so they will never support him. And so he changed job, get fired, and the next. At the end of the day, I never managed to launch with a telco. So while I was doing that, still I was thinking one thing that I needed to do is I needed to work on the speech to text to get it to be better, to be more real time. And I couldn't do that by myself as a small startup 6 years ago, even worse than now. And so that's one of the reasons I started the Voice Lab. So the Voice Lab Association, as I said, one of the first things that we've been working on is creating a data set that's big enough so we can train AI. And why is that an issue? So when the first big guys entered the ASR market, they didn't do French. Why not? Even the big American company, because there is not a lot of data sets with all the labeling that you need, that you used to need to train AIs. And so even Microsoft, I think they had to wait until they buy Nuance. And here was to, like you have in the US. And so there is no way we can build things independently. So we started working together, and now in French we have 9,000 hours of French voices recorded. So it's both big and not big. It's almost 5 times more than when we started. So that's big progress. It's only a tenth of what we want to do. So we want to have 100,000 hours. So still a lot of work to be done. And we started working on the API side. So having the first models that are available through APIs. And the vision is in the long term is to have a full marketplace where you have a lot of services around voice and companies that need those, they can find everything in a single place instead of going and finding like the 5 different startups, or not even startups, but the 5 different companies you need in France or in Europe when you want to do a speech-related service. On that, I am now kind of pivoting a little. So we're still doing voicemail at Voxis, but all of other language that we have on the roadmap. We are that are competitors with the big American guys, but they don't have the expertise change in AI, which is with all the transformer-based models. We are starting to be able to, and that are very good in terms of quality with less data. So that I think is really different in our approach is because I come from the telco space. I always think real time, and a lot of the issue I had as a user. Voxis using APIs at the beginning was that you have too many latency because you have too many steps. You need to transcribe, then you need to understand the answer, then you need to synthesize the answer, and that gives a user experience which is still not as good as we would like. But just to give you a little history about the economy, and then you try to find the words behind that. So that's the traditional that did that. But then one of the big issues is lexicon. So the lexicon means you need to have a lot of knowledge. So what's new now? As I said earlier, it's much faster. And you need much less annotated data. So earlier when I was saying that the Voice Lab, we wanted 100,000 hours of speech, you will have enough diversity that any use case you will come up with, you will find the 10,000 hours or the 15,000 hours that you need to train your model, and that model works super well because the data you are building it is really close to the use case that you are working on. It's not the same thing if you're building an ASR for helping kids to read, or if you're doing that for a banker on the trade floor. It's not the same vocabulary, it's not the same accent, it's not the same vocabulary, etc. So yeah, the great thing with this is that you get to do things in a much simpler way. And the approach that we have here is, at Voxis is to do something which is a little hybrid. So we will still have a lexicon and a language model, but now those are much smaller and can be done by people who don't have all the expertise. And we build those based on the use case that we are working on. So the lexicon and the data, and we are doing, with using that, but that's things that we hope to be using, is that you can go one step further and do what we call speech language understanding. So here the idea is that you don't even go through the text to understand what the person wants. You go directly from the speech to what the intent. So for some use cases, it doesn't make sense. If you can get directly from the speech to understand what are the requirements, the intent of the user, then you gain again also speed and latencies and user experience. Recently, is doing video indexing. So, not at all a telecom space, but in a way, now that we do a lot of video calls, it comes, it can't yet integrated into the IT systems. So it's a lot of knowledge that is what you call the, sorry, looking for my word in front, semantic search. Those videos in those calls is available to the company IT system. So that's what we build. And then you find the videos that are most in many languages, and so the French employee might be interested in a video. That I'm a masochist, so I'm still thinking about telecom and how to integrate all of that into the telecom stack. And it is at the edge. It's even on the devices. So you have Google will launch a few services. You do have a few things on the iPhones, even if it's a little less. The call centers stack, but it's on the edge, and it means it's very fragmented again because it depends on the device, the OS. Like I said, when I used to work at Orange, we sort of stopped just being transporting voice. The voice is a material, and we need to treat it and we transform it. And so my vision is that as I am working a lot on how to implement ASR in real time, this is something that makes sense to have then a mobile core, so you can offer services directly where that you take out of the noise, is you make the speech of the person easier to understand. Part of it is the noise, but all of those models from AI, things that should be on the core network. You're making a call, you don't need to be, that's not needed on your phone, that's some into their core network. So that's the next step for me is when we get the technology, try again to sell to telcos, and maybe that works better than voicemail because they will see the value better, hopefully. So that's it, and see how good that works. In the meantime, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karal. So, Karal, if you could take some questions while I get set up for the next remote session, well, hybrid session.
You want to vote? What? I'm here.
Go for it again, Florence.
No, we are on the PA.
Yes, you're on the PA.
Okay, so let's check. Hello, hi.
Hey everybody. Good to see you again.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, we'd all rather be in Portugal. Life doesn't always allow those things.
The weather is turned a lot nicer. It was really
Yes, it seems to be.
You can see we have.
So it sounds like we're okay. We're self-communicating.
Week or two. It's funny how little it matters where people are these days.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah. That was the pandemic, right? So that was really a game changer in terms of.
So proper, what, 10 plus years? That was all mediated over Skype, and we didn't do much video. It was mostly text and audio.
One session. So that you really have a pen and can draw things.
And just streams it out into the session, right?
Yeah.
So my pre-WebRTC conferencing product, another app, and one of our customers was a thing called Twiddler, which was a whiteboard app. And like an idiot, I didn't kind of chase it and really drive it forward because it was a huge win. They get, people would do remote meetings and they'd do the audio, and people would draw and talk about slides, or they do whatever it was you wanted to do. But the driving thing was that you could draw on it and you could put a circle around the thing that mattered. It was great. I have no idea what happened.
But also not a real whiteboard, right?
But they got bought by
Adobe, right?
Yeah, and actually, when I think about it, in Cisco have a combined screen and whiteboard.
Yeah, I think in WebEx you have a whiteboard function as well.
But they had a
physical one. Wow, that's yeah.
But that
so
was you had to rent.
Oh, it's all over now.
Maybe that's an actual AR application. You can kind of draw on a thing that isn't there, and everybody agrees that it is.
We should save it for later for this discussion. Sorry. But it's a good hint, really. So maybe that is really a driver for the, how do you want to call it, third room or metaverse.
As Alan was just noting to us, as you're moving into you probably can't see in the distance right behind me, the beer can is the tap apparently, so anarchy and chaos reign at the moment. But I'm sure we'll still start at some point. So it's a good thing at least about a panel discussion tonight, we're going to be flexible.
Not a 4K stream. This is like a 0K stream.
Probably be better.
Match reality, you just line people up and spread them over the stereo spectrum. And I still do it for the podcast recorder. And particularly in audio only, it's really useful.
Oh yes. However, there's an interesting thing, so we did it also earlier, and let's say we were talking a long time, and Tim is talking from the very right in my right ear, so it needs that you adapt slowly, then Tim will be the new center. Because in the real world, I would shift my head in your direction, and then I would speak to you directly. So that is something from a UX perspective, which we observed.
We've got some customers that are doing the quote-unquote metaverse stuff, right? And with avatars, or in one case, just actually a 3D space with 2D feeds.
We're going to start now, guys, okay?
Yep. Okay.
Excellent. We're back. Well, thanks for I know it's tempting because of the intense schedule to just stay away for longer, but thanks for coming back. So we're now going to have a session actually is to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves before we get into the questions. Okay, so we'll start with the two in person, not least. Okay, so introductions, please.
I'm Aaron Simon. I'm the CEO and founder of South America. We do live video.
Okay, over to you, Tim.
So I'm Tim Hansen, I'm the CTO. Tech is building a dedicated to security cameras, generally IoT devices, with the idea that we avoid kind of being too server-based if we can. And that's been a lot of fun. And I do a little dabble in little niche social apps for random things like recording podcasts or, book clubs and random things like that.
I guess I'm up next. Live Switch, formerly Frozen Mountain. We've been doing streaming of some sort since 2000, back in whenever it was, 2012, all the way up to more recently. We're powering Adobe Connect, and we built a virtual Thunderdome for from small to large. We've got our fingers in it at some point, I'm sure.
I'm engineering manager at Element. I'm also working for quite a long time in the field of video building up video conferencing as a first-class citizen, or something in the metaverse, which is called in our vocabulary. So looking forward to this nice panel discussion.
So please go easy on me. War story that I'm bringing to the desert to bring light speed connectivity. Limited only by, I think that the notion that we had, I think that the use cases that we had for everything from real-time massively multi-bit subspace. I'm now at Apple, where I am.
If you could just sort of run through some of the questions, your view.
Be happy to. So, WebRTC is in a much better state now than it was 7 or 8 years ago. I'll say that. But it definitely still is not where it could be. I think far and away the biggest challenge still is interoperability, and that's driven by the lack of standards around signaling. We're working on some of the new WIP and web standards and trying to get some ingress-egress protocols a little more defined. It's also a little complicated, although I think that some of the commercial vendors and open source vendors that are doing some stuff around kind of wrapping up the SDKs or the APIs into SDKs are making that a little less of a challenge going forward. But I think overall, like I said, I went through the pain of going through the transition back when there was even ORTC and some of those other protocols back then. So I look at it and say, holy crap, how far have we come? On the flip side, some things are still really nasty. It'd be really nice if Apple played a little nicer. They keep breaking stuff. It'd be nice if they were a little more consistent.
Like a personal attack.
Nothing. No offense there, Nikki. Sorry. Aside from that, I mean, it's really impressive how far we've come. But a lot of the things that are still happening out there, and oh man, there's still quite a ways to go.
I still have a Google alert set up for ORTC. I guess I could delete that at this point. Go back.
I think you're probably safe.
Yeah, I think so. Florian, perhaps?
So Jared, I think what you covered is more the interoperability part. But what I also would like to have going forward, that some of the base building blocks within the WebRTC stack, echo cancellation, jitter buffer handling, and whatever, would be replaceable. Similar to we have the mechanism with the insert with streams API, and I think this would also going forward help a little bit more to distinguish between the different solutions and to add some value on top of it. And performance, I think, is also an issue. So if I nowadays have a WebRTC conference with, let's say, 8 to 10 participants, you need really a modern computer to handle it. Otherwise, if you have a, let's say, 5-year-old notebook, you will often hear the fan, and that is also impacting audio quality. But however, I think it's a nice framework, it's a common standard, and it's it enables a lot of people to provide a lot of very intelligent and unique video applications dedicated for certain use cases. And I think with the recent SDKs emerging, also the barrier for folks providing WebRTC stuff or video conferencing stuff is really lowered, and this is really nice. This is also why we decided to foster this matrix RTC, but we have a lot of different frameworks out there which really help you to make great stuff in the WebRTC ecosystem.
Do you think a lot of people want to change out some of those jitter buffers and stuff like that? My experience is everybody hates them, just wants them to work.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It really depends. So you don't need all this stuff if you have a decent internet connection. So this is the easiest way to fix the jitter buffer thing. Echo cancellation is more challenging. So I would say that would be that could make an impact. So at least there are various use cases. So if you have a TV attached, which adds a lot of video processing, then you have a lot of audio delay, and then you're not in the window of the echo cancellation tracker, and then it doesn't blah, 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 blah. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Or when it comes to stereo echo cancellation, we earlier talked about spatial audio and dummy heads and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think the jitter buffer might be an academic thing, yeah, right. But it would also be nice to change it.
Let's go to Jane here. What's the perspective kind of from Daly's side of things of the state of WebRTC and you know how you all have addressed it?
Yeah, so I just realized that I didn't really say much about what I do at Daly, but I'm part of the DevRel team, engineering manager there, and I don't really have like a telecom background. I don't really know as much as everybody like what the state was like 15 years ago. But one of the things that I think that can still be improved a lot is education within for WebRTC. So how to get the community, make it bigger, and how can we make sure that TADSummit like in 5 years time would be like hundreds of people, which would be engineers.
Thank you. Tim, let's go over to you. Is the state of WebRTC dead? Are you going to replace it with?
So the state of WebRTC, like a huge, and there are, you know, whatever it is, 2.5 billion endpoints are scare a lot of people off, and I think there's a big, like there's a problem there, and it'll advert for a small effort that we're doing here at the moment called WebRTC.nu, which is an attempt to try and bring. So encourage you all to go to the WebRTC.nu website and fill in the survey to the standards making bodies that can help. But to your question about web transport, I actually think like WebRTC has a strong point that I think monitor a baby even when the ISP goes down. You know, and that's a huge win. The same true for security cameras and stuff like that. The thing we're doing here, you could in theory do equally well with web transport, and I suspect in 5-10 years time. But the stuff that I'm doing, the peer-to-peer stuff, controlling robots, controlling baby monitors, stuff like that, you simply. So I think like the summary is, I think we're at a transition point. I think WebRTC is going to split into 2 directions at this point.
Let's go to Nikki, and Nikki, I'm going to change it into kind of 2 questions for you. The first is, you know, kind of, and that's to the next question that I'll then ask if anyone else on the panel has a comment on. Who's making money?
Yeah, so we started thinking, okay, this is going to be an industry that has a lot of money and for whom every millisecond really counts, and really start to build a name for ourselves. But we quickly realized that having that level of improvement in latency was not something that we could replicate in first world areas, not with a delta as great as what we could accomplish in the Middle East. So then we tried to focus on quality of service and quality of experience, right? So jitter, packet loss improvements, a little bit of privacy and security improvements, and hoping that if we started to open up sort of the TELUS and RingCentral and customer service industry with this value proposition of more reliable customer service calls leads to happier customers, leads to more revenue in the long run, that would be the next big sort of industry that we opened up for our company. And we just found that folks weren't willing to pay what we needed them to pay. it just
Nobody cared.
the things I was thinking about in preparation for the panel was, you know, WebRTC is free, but it's not because it costs a lot to deploy the infrastructure, the networks, the servers. And is the audience, are the target consumers really, are the buyers where we need them to be? Because if the buyers aren't aligned with those costs, then the developers aren't going to put in the effort to create the products to then fuel the industry. And so even before thinking about, or I think it's parallel lines of thought, right? Whether or not the APIs are in a place where the developers can adopt them, but also whether the market is there to warrant the expenditure. And so one of the questions that I had for Tim also was just understanding what initial successes you've seen with the baby monitor and whether or not the associated cost with having this better solution is being paid for, either by the end user or whoever your audience is. And then Jared, LiveSwitch seems to be doing well. What are you doing that Subspace didn't do? Tell me. We're bankrupt now.
Very interesting. I'll let Tim go first. Tim, I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead.
So I think the answer is yes, but only in niches. Like there's a visceral privacy requirement around and low latency requirements about like hearing your baby cry or seeing your baby move, and so that it's a user need that you're addressing there, which doesn't it doesn't work with bird cameras, because you don't care if a bird camera is running 10 seconds slow, and you don't care that it's being routed via a cloud server in China because it's not private. So it's like you end up in the niches, and this comes back to something I think I said to Alan the first time we met, however many years ago it was, at a panel, I think, which is that actually WebRTC and these technologies don't make money in themselves. They're only a means of addressing a niche market, and you have to find what it is that the customer is prepared to pay for, and maybe WebRTC helps you get there.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren. I didn't mean to.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it's not the tech stack. It's really the idea and the product you have. You can sell. It's not the servers and not the better latency and not the better video quality.
Yeah, it's the value around it, right? Like if you look at WebRTC, Tim, you mentioned there's the core protocol that's on the wire, right? And that's the thing that everybody interoperates with, and that's great, right? It's the stuff around it that does the value add, right? Like a lot of what we're doing. Tim, we've got some use cases that are like neonatal, right? Where they're monitoring neonatal services in a hospital, and the parents want to watch that, right? Like that's that niche, right? Where there's a real value. And one of the things that we've had some interesting discussions around with some of the core business is dependent on some sort of audio or video streaming. For that, it seems like a reasonable ask to say, hey, this is a core function of what we do, responsible for making that happen, right? So sure that's possible, but the focus tends to stick around either a niche value, broadcasters, they're willing to, there's a specific value and a specific use, subject to the speed of light,
But people are getting used to it, so nowadays it's more acceptable.
That's true too.
Peer-to-peer, then it drives the cost down hugely. And what's interesting about that is that the interaction, the low latency enables a class of interaction that doesn't happen even in something like this. I can have a group of people, one of them can laugh and it doesn't move the video focus, and if you do the stereo mix right and you do the timing right, it doesn't interrupt all interjections, all of the stuff.
We talked 20 milliseconds.
No.
I think I agree to an extent. We do peer-to-peer as well, so we can, users can use our stuff without any they want. And we do have, again, some of those, what I would call lower value, like the Roll20, right? The D&D officially do, but realistically they don't. So you're right. So I think maybe there's a separation of ones that are no money, no revenue, and then there's value and there is revenue, right? And I'm not saying that, I'm not opposed to somebody the higher value in the long run, because that's the ones that are going to make my education, because everybody's willing to pay for education. So there's an obvious willingness to pay and a need. And that can take lots of revenue, lots of different use cases, everything from, just walls to selfie cams to sports bettors customers that are building VCs. So I don't think they've got a whole lot of money for long, let me put it that way. So those are, and then there's other ones that are maybe not quite as revenue heavy, but definitely have a high value, which is the healthcare type stuff, right? Like what Tim's talking about, but then also including things like, one-on-one calling for patient and doctor, remote nurses who need to call up a doctor and get a consult, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So those are probably the biggest.
Yeah, one of the not industries, but customers that we had was a startup focusing on remote surgery across continents, and that's one where certainly real-time matters. Yeah. The other one that I've always thought would be interesting is military.
We have a number of, I probably can't get into a lot of that one. Those exist and are definitely a use case, let's put it that way. In particular, actually,
Tapped markets out there, I think that's
like the broadcast, promote your product kind of thing, but then also the one-on-one personal figure right now in
just doing that, talking about her products, and the producer would say in her ear, "We're getting a lot of response from that on the website. People are buying that. Say that again." The personal shopper type thing is even that feedback even.
The metaverse thing again, because then they're like, "Oh, well, can I demo this thing in 3D? And how can I show this to my customer?" We're seeing it in like moving and stuff too. That's another one that's like kind of personal shopper-esque, where like anybody who has to go out to a home and do some work at the home, it's a home inspection, moving companies, pressure washing companies, all those kind of guys. They're leveraging that kind of a solution, one click, show me around your house so I can, give you an estimate without having to come out, right? Save them some time.
Yeah, I think those are definitely interesting. Jared, I've seen some of that as well. A lot of the personal shopper that we've seen, I would say, is more, instead of B2C, it's like B to HVC, high value customers. So not necessarily a wide range of things,
100%.
but yeah, exactly, very, very high.
You're not going to use it to sell a hammer.
No, no, probably not. Gold plated, maybe, but yes. Jared mentioned metaverse a little bit. Jane, I want to start with you. What have you seen in kind of the metaverse space, and do you see an increasing role of WebRTC specifically within that? Metaverse, Web3 more broadly.
Yeah, I see a lot of growth within daily, at least for gaming Web3. Not much. I don't know how much I can say about that right now, but that is definitely growing. Web3 has, of course, even a bigger concern about community and accepting people within that space. But I think it would be, we can say it's hot air, but it's also something that it's hard to ignore at this point. We at one point, maybe I want to ask first, how do we describe Web3 at this point? Most people, when you say Web3, it's okay, crypto, NFTs,
right,
things like that, blockchain. But is that how do you see Web3 at this point?
Me personally?
Yes, you personally.
Oh goodness. Well, it does seem to be a lot of hot air, certainly, but I think that there's absolutely things there. I mean, one thing that's, for example, that is not something we're working on, but I think is very interesting and relevant to some of the other discussions here today, is the concept of voices and voice interfaces and the increasing use of that, and how that will be used beyond the Star Trek episode that Ben referenced, but in the metaverse especially,